And of course, the Turkic Mughal emperors ruled across North India for 5 centuries. The Taj Mahal was built by one, started before the first Thanksgiving in America, and ended after European kings concluded peace at Westphalia. Religious pluralism generally has worked well in modern India, and that's mostly thanks to the nation's modern founding father, Mahatma Gandhi, who was the ultimate celebrant. Gandhi saw his religion, Hinduism, as the nonviolent search for truth. In his words, the need of the moment is not one religion, but mutual respect and tolerance of the devotees of the different religions of the world. The soul of religion is one, but it is encased in a multitude of forms. Truth is the exclusive property of no single scriptures. Because of Gandhi, tolerance for religious minorities is woven into the fabric of India's national government. Not just through words, but also through his nonviolent deeds, Gandhi has much to teach us all. He was a central inspiration, for instance, for Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders in America. But at the sub-national level, historical tensions and resentments run deep. The fear of communalism remains strong. Local governments often have a hard time restraining themselves or their people. India will wrestle with those forces in the coming year. In national elections in 2014, the opposition Hindu Nationalist Party will be led by Narendra Modi, arguably India's most popular politician, but he is also the most widely feared. Hindu-Muslim riots stormed his home state of Gujarat in 2002, killing nearly 1,000 Muslims. Many still blame Modi for failing to stop the violence, and as a result, the United States still does not issue him a visa, thanks to a provision in US law that bars any foreign government official who, quote, directly carries out at any time particularly severe violations of religious freedom. Both India and China are protective of their sovereignty. Nevertheless, as I think we can see, both Muslims and Christians around the world share an interest in protecting the rights of minorities in those two massive countries. But what we do in our countries toward our own minorities, Christian and Muslim included, will set critical precedents for how they treat our brethren. Continuing west from India, we enter the broader Middle East. The Arab awakenings started there as secular revolutions against failed economics and political oppression by largely military rulers. But these democratic uprisings have also unleashed fundamentalist forces, raising new questions about religious liberty. Whether it is the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, extremists in the Free Syrian Army, or the continuing reign of the Ayatollahs in Iran, the religious persecution of Christian, Jews, and all manner of other Muslim sects remains a major challenge to hopeful Jeffersonians or Gandhians. In today's Arab world, many wonder whether a strategy of hope is even realistic. Of course, the most effective and established democracy in the region, and the West's closest ally, is still Israel. A country born out of religious persecution, it is the region's model for toleration and restraint. But even here, freedom of religion is far from neutral. Ahmad Tibi embodies the mixed message of Israel. He is an elected Arab representative in a Jewish and democratic state. In his words, Israel is a democracy for Jews and a Jewish state for Arabs. Right or wrong, Mr. Tibi argues that the Arab citizens of Israel, not even the occupied territory, 1/5 of the country's population, do not share in equality of religious treatment. With that, our circuitous route around the world brings us back to Turkey, a land and a people very dear to me. My paternal grandfather and maternal great-grandparents were born there. My grandfather served in the Ottoman army in World War I, and as a child, I still recall him showing off his fez and his hookah pipe, and boasting that Greeks from Turkey played tavli better than Greeks from Greece. Kemal Ataturk's views on sovereignty and secularism are the starting place for any discussion on the topic in Turkey. He hoped to build an independent state that would divorce secular sovereign power from traditional religious leaders. In that sense, he combined an Enlightenment instinct for Turkey as the home of a modern nation with a view that the state should be strong enough to withstand foreign intervention. Ataturk did see a paternalistic role for Islam. Limited and moderate religious instruction could provide a common moral foundation for a country populated not only with Anatolian Turks, but also with refugees from Bosnia, Hungary, Bulgaria, the Tartars, Albania, and across the former Ottoman Empire. But he intentionally avoided the fascism of later Italy and Germany, as well as the communist totalitarianism of Russia. His reform of primary education, including stripping out religious dogma. Religious minorities were formally protected, but they clearly have taken a second-class citizenship status since, which in many ways was a step backward from the protection they had received under the Ottoman Caliphate. 75 years after Ataturk's death, the treatment of minorities has been anything but exemplary. Christian and Jewish populations have declined dramatically, and the government has directly intervened in how those communities conduct their public and private affairs, including choosing their own leaders and educating their children and their clergy. The question remains for how confident Erdogan's Turkey is in its own identity. Certainly, Turkey's recent decision to follow findings by Europe's Human Rights Court on minority religious properties was a major step forward. Indeed, it is hard to imagine another sovereign nation outside Europe agreeing to change its domestic laws in reaction to the EU's Human Rights Court. If Turkey continues to take steps in line with other democratic governments, such as allowing full religious instruction to minorities, or allowing these organizations to pick their own leaders, it will continue to distinguish itself from the Chinas, Irans, and repressive states within India that exist. Prime Minister Erdogan also speaks the language of paternalism, which he describes when he describes the AKP as the Islamic analog to Germany's Christian Democrats. Whether Erdogan's Turkey is willing to similarly embrace other religious minorities in the way Christian Democrats, however, remains an unanswered question. Just this October, as our German and Turkish participants surely know, the Christian Democrats elected their first ever Muslim member of parliament, Camille Joussouf. Ms. Joussouf believes it is not just possible for non-Christian Germans to believe in low taxes and a role for religious instruction in schools. The Christian Democrats have a Muslim, only in America. So the question for Erdogan's Turkey is whether it sees for itself a vision that begins to get beyond fear and conceit. Does it see itself as a place capable of celebrating diversity? Recent protests in Turkey, which brought together religious and secular communities, suggest that the Turkish people themselves may have moved towards a more diverse, tolerant, and democratic society. Will Mr. Erdogan's government follow? That challenge is equally great for Europe, whether it can also see that society without fear. Europe is only now beginning to emerge from an economic crisis that threatened the EU's very basic existence. With the EU focused on its internal financial challenges, it should be little surprise that discussions are on hold about whether to welcome new entrants such as Turkey. Yet if that conversation begins again, which I believe it will, the question of whether Turkey belongs in the EU will pivot not only on whether Turkey sees itself as a tolerant European nation, but also how broadly Europe defines its own tolerance. This conversation did not begin very well. In 2002, the chairman of Europe's Constitutional Convention, Giscard d'Estaing, famously said that Turkey had a different culture, a different approach, a different way of life. In my view, disregarding the extraordinary distance Turkey has traveled when compared with neighbors in a very troubled region. Yet recently, Giscard and the Christian Democrats here in Germany have expressed an openness to reviving that conversation. Tearing down the wall between Europe and Turkey will require setting aside not just hubris on both sides, but also conceit and fear. Tearing down walls is a metaphor for embracing hope and diversity. And on both sides, that begins with respect. Thank you very much.